Hi everyone, I'm Ellie and I've been given the very special honour of stepping in as guest host for this very special bonus episode where we'll be interviewing the person who's usually sitting in this chair, Kay King. I'm really excited to turn the tables round and dive into Kay's stories, get to know a little bit more about her and what drew her into surrogacy. I'm going to hand over and let her give a little introduction to herself.
Thank you, Ellie. Yeah, so hi, I'm Kay King. I am usually in the hosting chair for this podcast. So it's been a bit mix and match across this season. But I am the head of ethics and policy at my surrogacy journey. I am also a surrogate. This is my second journey, but my first pregnancy. I'm 34 weeks pregnant for a set of IPs who live in London. I'm also a doula, which is somebody who supports people throughout labour, birth, antenatally and postnatally. And I specialise in loss and grief in that space. So I think that's all my hats.
Yeah, you wear a lot of hats. A lot of those. I'm lucky enough to work with you on a day-to-day basis, and I do have a little bit of insight into your journey, your current one, your previous one. But for those that don't, can you just give us a little overview from deciding you want to do surrogacy all the way through to right now?
Yeah, so a little kind of snapshot of the journey. I've worked in reproductive health for years and years, and I ended up partnering with Mike and Wes on a project in my old job back in 2021. Got to know them, thought they were amazing, thought what they were doing was really incredible. It was kind of in the infancy of my surrogacy journey, so I really watched it evolve. And it sparked my interest in actually maybe surrogacy is something that I would like to try myself. And so I gave that some thought. And in 2022, I got back in touch with them and said, I would quite like to do a surrogacy journey, actually. And I remember Wes saying to me, I've got the perfect set of IPs for you. I know exactly who I would match you with. And it turned out that I knew them, which was really sort of serendipitous. Actually, I did my yoga teacher's training with the intended mum, Georgia, who's on a previous episode of this season. And it kind of happened, things started happening and moving quite quickly from there. So we went on a journey together. We had 3 embryo transfers, 5 rounds of IVF, 2 rounds were cancelled. We didn't do a transfer. And then realised that actually kind of these embryos weren't really working. The clinic that we were with wasn't really kind of working out for us. And our journey came to an end as Georgia and Duncan made the decision to go on a pathway in Mexico. And for a while I took a bit of a pause and then came back round to deciding that, I still want to do this. And matched with my now IPs, Danny and Edu, kind of in middle of 2023. And here we are, pregnant and ready to go.
Ready to go. And how far away from giving birth are you now?
So, I am 34 and a bit weeks pregnant. So how far exactly away I am from giving birth, I'm planning to go into spontaneous labour. So who knows, but let's cross our fingers and open our legs and hope for 6 weeks.
Yeah, I love the way you put things. Just knowing you and working with you, I can 100% hand on heart say that you are exactly the type of person who, when I think of a surrogate, you are the person I think of. You have such just a natural selfless nature, but I think for those people listening, it'd be really interesting to know actually what drew you to surrogacy and how that actually came about, how that happened, the kind of feelings involved, how you broke that to your kids and your family. And
thanks, Ellie. Yeah, I'll take all the gushing compliments I can get at the moment, quite honestly, because I feel like a planet. So, but no, thank you. It's interesting. A lot of people assume that you go into surrogacy because you love being pregnant. I've never particularly loved being pregnant. I don't unlike it. I enjoyed carrying my own 2 children, but I'm not somebody who's like, oh my gosh, this feels amazing in my body. I am relatively asymptomatic throughout pregnancy, so I haven't had huge amounts of nausea. I haven't sort of been hugely debilitated in my movement or what have you. I've never, fortunately for me, experienced any kind of real complications in pregnancy. But I don't love it, and it wasn't for the pregnancy. And then the next assumption people would have is, oh, you must just love babies. Honestly, again, as a doula, I often say to people, you think I love babies, but they're all right, but I kind of prefer grown-ups. What I love is the possibility of how we purpose our bodies. And I'm fascinated in all areas of reproductive health. I think what we are able to do and the way in which we are able to form different families and support people with journeys where they're in and out of these cycles of hope and hopelessness is incredible. And I also, as a very strong feminist, think it's amazing to be able to go, I'm going to make a decision about my body, to be purposed in a way where I am making the decisions and having the control in a world which otherwise dominantly tells us what we can and can't do with our bodies. So for me, surrogacy in many ways is a bit of a finger up to the patriarchy and a little bit of a, I can make all the decisions around my body in relation to this, and this is my purpose.
Absolutely. And those of you watching, listening who know Kay will just know 100% that no doubt everything she's just said is completely true. As I'd like to know a little bit more about your work as a doula and how you got into that and how that ties into your own experience. And you've got a little bit of background knowledge that not many surrogates will have going into it. So do you find that's kind of helpful? Is it maybe not necessarily harmful, but does it add any anxieties to the journey?
No, I think I think it's massively helpful. I think, I've been a doula for a long time now, and reproductive health wasn't what I went into. My degree is in fine art. No one really knows that, but I was meant to be working in the arts right now. I'm not quite sure how we ended up here. But I had a pregnancy loss before my first kind of quite late on what would be called a miscarriage, quite a late on gestational loss. And then I got pregnant with my now nearly 14-year-old daughter. And I was working in the arts at the time and, kind of just managing a pregnancy alongside my normal day job. And then the pregnancy took an unexpected turn in the sense that 40 weeks rolled round and I didn't have a baby. 41 weeks rolled round, 42 weeks rolled round. And it had never occurred to me that people possibly carry babies for longer than you see in the media or what have you. So I'd read loads of stuff around labour and birth, but here I was in this world with my daughter's father going, oh my gosh, we're like nearly 20 days over our due date. What's happening? And we were getting pressure left, right and centre from consultants and from midwives that actually we needed, this baby had to come out. And suddenly I was making decisions about my body that I hadn't expected, I hadn't researched, I hadn't thought about. And it felt like some of the loneliest and isolated days because we'd overtaken our friends who had gone post-dates. We'd overtaken people who'd gone really post-dates, and we suddenly reached this point where we're just in no man's land and there's no advice, and we've tried everything. I've eaten 27 million fine apples and eaten every curry in the Indian takeout shop and been on every walk. This baby's not.
Which are all like superstitions.
Superstitions on induction, exactly. And eventually I ended up having an induction at 43 weeks plus 3 days, which is quite a long time after. And I just learned so much. My induction was not overly positive. It was highly medicalised. I was in labour for 53 hours and still had a vaginal birth with my daughter after 53 hours. We were all knackered and I learned so much. And during that time, I think just suddenly went, oh my gosh, like this, people need people with them that have navigated this journey before. Like having someone around that had experience into that would be really amazing. And that's where I first learned about the role of the doula.
And ever since then?
Yeah, and ever since then, really. And, I actually did my initial doula training in South Africa with an amazing community midwife. We were living over there shortly after Kiki was born. And so I trained over there and then came back and did my formal training with developing doulas and then became a specialist in baby loss and pregnancy and fertility loss a couple of years later.
Amazing. And I suppose in all of that and your first journey, second journey, is there one moment that like really sticks out to you, whether it's a positive one or a negative one, and the reason you kind of remember it for?
In my whole doula journey, is there a moment that stands out for me?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is a question and a half. Yes, I'm going to go for the first time I supported a stillbirth because that changed the course of my doula work again. So I had been a doula for a few years by that point. I had supported some early gestation losses. I'd supported a couple of terminations. So I understood the notion of loss, but the first time I supported a client and their child was born still, at full term, I understood my role as a doula for the first time properly ever, which was to be with that woman and to be with that family. And when the focus was off of the baby, the clarity of my role was so present for me. It's like, I have to be here right now. Everything in you wants to run away because this is scary and it's sad and it's tragic and you didn't expect to be here, but everything in me has to stay and I have to learn how to be with these people. And that has actually informed all of my work since in the loss space. So I would go for that. And I would also beautifully name their daughter Luna, who was a gorgeous little baby born sleeping.
And in your surrogacy journeys so far, is there a specific moment there that sticks out to you as well?
In my surrogacy journeys, yeah, I think both times it would be in relation to the, moments with IP. So Georgia and Duncan, it's not a singular moment. It's more, we had a lovely relationship, me, Georgia and Duncan. It felt really lovely to see each other every time we did. Georgia was incredible because she'd been on this long journey of her own IVF and her own cycles. And she was such a support to me as her surrogate, which is kind of an ironic playing out of the role. But she was supporting me throughout all of the embryo transfers in this whole new world of IVF that I didn't know. So I think just the loveliness and the continued loveliness of our relationship, which is really quite unique. Danny and Edu, I'd probably go for when we went to Madrid to meet their families over the summer. Mm-hmm. And I got this really privileged insight just into where this little girl is going to go, and meeting all of their parents and their siblings and seeing where they're from. We had a wonderful, wonderful few days over there.
Yeah. And I've been lucky enough to meet one of your children, your wonderful daughter, who's actually come along. You'll notice I'm filming her. My new best friend, who've pretty much been into it. And I've got a little bit of insight into what you're like as a person, as a parent, but how do you feel, if at all, surrogacy has kind of shaped the way you are as a parent or your children's upbringing? Or Kay's daughter is very, very bright, and when she speaks about her mum being a surrogate, she is just so proud, and you can really, really tell. Tell us a little bit about how that kind of works in your little bubble at home.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm very biased, but my two children are the best children in the world. I mean, other people's opinions count that fat. So I'm really, really blessed with Kiki and Ozzo. And I think, to be honest with you, in terms of surrogacy, they've just massively taken it in their stride. But that probably is caveated with the fact that I think they think I'm a bit weird, just generally as a mum. When you've got a mum who's a doula, who works in reproductive health, we have some of the strangest conversations in our family at the strangest moments, kind of key things that stand out. I remember teaching them about contraception probably way before any parent would teach a child about contraception, and it being just before my parents were coming around for dinner, and I was there showing my son how to put a condom onto a banana, I think, and then suddenly realised my parents were coming around for dinner and we had to tidy it all away. We had an interesting conversation about castration around the dinner table the other evening, and my kids do go, "Mum, you're really weird," they get that. But because of that, I think also when I compare them in their peer group, around kind of their sexual and their reproductive health knowledge, but also we joke, me and their dad, about the fact that every single school report we've had back on our kids, the one thing it says in every single one consistently is mature beyond their years. And I feel proud of that. Like the key thing for me, I've said this before in seasons, is that the best bit of parenting advice anyone ever gave me is it's your responsibility to raise adults, not to raise children. That's the goal of parenthood. We're not actually trying to get to the point where we're like raising kids. We're raising adults, and I'm extremely proud of the adults that they're becoming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I haven't met your son, but just meeting your daughter, I'd 100% agree. I'd like to give our audience a little bit of a sneak peek into a little bit more about you, diving even further than we are at the moment. Would you share some lesser known facts about you with us?
Lesser known facts about me?
As weird or wonderful as you like.
Okay. I love swimming. I absolutely love water, and I love being underwater particularly, and I spend a lot of time swimming. That's probably like a sporty, boring fact. I've spent over 6 years of my life living in sub-Saharan Africa at different stages, different kind of chunks of time. I am a queer woman who lives in Devon, where there's not a very big queer community. So that can be an interesting thing. I absolutely love electronic dance music, and particularly techno. I spend a lot of time raving. But with your IPs as well. With my current IPs, yeah, that's a big passion of mine. And I have a love-hate relationship with my small cockapoo called Icky.
Thank you for sharing, Gaia. And just to wrap up on a final note, as someone who does have all this experience with female health, female reproductive health, as a doula, as a 2-time surrogate, what would you say to someone? What would you say to a woman considering being a surrogate?
I mean, I'd probably sit and say a lot of things, but just check in with what's resonating for you. If you are starting a surrogacy journey because you feel like you are stepping in to fix or save someone else's situation, take a second think, right? Like, surrogacy has to be in equal measure about what you are doing for yourself as a surrogate and for a set of intended parents. This is going to go differently to how you imagine at some point, right? Whether that's a longer timescale, a different birth, different relationship, different set of IPs, something is going to go differently to how you're imagining this. So check in with yourself before you start this journey. Why am I doing this? For my own reasons, and make that your motivation and your goal, and all of the other things will sort around that.
Thank you. And one thing you said in an earlier episode, which I just want to highlight again, I think goes really well with the piece you've just said, is I don't thank your surrogate all the time. There's no need as an intended parent to sit and say thank you. And I suppose that kind of just really reflects that it is your choice. That's Absolutely. One of the things to be sure of, right? As a woman going into this, that it's your choice to do this and you shouldn't expect anyone to be grateful.
Absolutely. On both journeys, one of the first things I said to both sets of IPs is like, of course, like, we're going to have gratitude and, you know, respect for each other throughout this journey. But I don't want you to hold me in this place of reverence. I don't want you to be eternally grateful to me because I'm stepping into this of my own choice and accord as well. And I'm getting a lot and learning a lot about myself as well. So let's just like level the playing field. You know, we're all in this together. And you don't have to be thanking me at every juncture.
Absolutely. Kay, thank you so much for sharing with us. If this episode touched you in any way and you'd like to get in touch with us or find out more about our unique surrogate membership, you can visit our website at www.mysurrogacyjourney.com or contact us on Instagram at officialmysurrogacyjourney.